Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. In honor of Black History Month, we thought we'd pay tribute and showcase some of the great defining black characters the world has come to love.
In celebration of Black Panther's release, it seemed best to start with some of our MCU favorites. After all, Marvel has created some of the coolest black heroes known to man.
So, without further delay, let's explore the history of War Machine on Black History Heroes.
Yeah.
James Rhode Island Rhodes. Dragon, I'm sorry, I love the nickname Rhode Island. I'm very caught on that now. Like it would make it even better if he's like not from Rhode Island at all. It's just like sort of like, hey, Rhodes, Rhoddy, Rhode Island.
Tony gave him the nickname Rhoddy from like, hey Rhodes. Remember your wild years where you had that band and you toured in Rhode Island and you made it crazy? He said it all. See, not only was he a roadie for a band, but he actually played in Rhode Island, hence the roadie. He's a roadie to the max, darn it. Okay, but seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
In all seriousness, though, War Machine, Dragon, War Machine, of course, this is a character that that's been around since the early days of the MCU, and of course is also been very prominent. Dragon, I think my thesis statement on War Machine is, I feel like War Machine is a very, very important kind of he toes the line between a sidekick and a hero in his own right. I mean, he very much is a hero, but I feel like the interesting parts about War Machine's history, from what I've looked up, is just how pivotal he is to Tony Stark's operation. You know what I mean? Just how closely aligned he is with him.
Yeah, I would say, Rhodey, in reflection on James Rhodes, he is very much he's very much a great reflection in the MCU of progress and evolution. He really is, because he represents, and something we even see in something like Jessica Jones with a character like Trish, where it's a character who kind of starts off as as the supporting character, the friend, who of course goes on a path of becoming a hero in their own right. And I'm just saying, Rhodey, I think, opened the door for that sort of thing for a character like Trish down the line, or any number of other characters. Again,
absolutely. I think that was Rhodey's big contribution in terms of the comic book. I mean, we're kind of jumping ahead of ourselves here.
Yeah,
let's get into the creation of Rhodey, Dragon. What do you got?
Certainly. So, let's see. So it's important to delineate this, because he started off as Rhodey, much like he did, as we'll see in the MCU. He starts off as Rhodey before he gets to War Machine. So
Next time, baby.
Exactly. So
except it won't be the same actor.
So we have a few points of introduction for Rhodey here. So I gotta be specific here. So we started off as Rhodey in 1979 in Iron Man 118. He then was upgraded to filling in for Iron Man in 1983. So he was in a suit in '83, and then finally he was in he was War Machine in 1992. I want to say in the War Machine book. I want to say that was like his own book, labeled War Machine. They probably introduced the concept, then they gave him his own book in '92.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Rhodey. So again, there's the specifics here. So James Rhodes was created by John Byrne and David Mitchell, if I'm saying that right, David Mitchell. And War Machine was Len Kamitsky and Kevin Hopgood. They kind of, I guess, they came up with the idea of like, okay, let's theme the suit to him instead of just putting him in another Iron Man suit, because essentially, let me build to that. Let me build to how War Machine came to be. Let's start with how Rhodey came to be. So Rhodey came to be in that he was retrofitted, he was refitted into the Iron Man origin. So he had the Iron Man origin from the first issue, where Tony Stark, he's of course the age-old creation behind Iron Fist is that Stan Lee wanted him. Basically, Stan Lee had a string of just like good ideas that no one in their right minds would have came up with. Basically, he just had the right ideas when no one else would think of them first, and they're very simple ideas. But he's like, I'm just going to do. Basically, it's like the opposite of everything in comics, like per character. And with Iron Man, it was very much, I'm going to make people of the '60s were very anti-war profiteering, very anti-war. I'm going to make them love. I'm going to make them love the symbol of that. I'm going to make them sympathize with them. And
You know, it's ironic, Dragon, because I feel like what Stan Lee did in the 60s is sort of very similar to what the MCU is doing right now for the comic book movie genre. In terms of like every movie they do is kind of like, well, it sticks to a formula. It sort of reinvents itself in different genres.
Exactly. It's never just the thing. While people could argue like a formula, again, I would also say a winning formula, but with that, there's always something to make it stick out. I agree with you very much so on that. Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, so yes, so the point is, we have the origin classic, Iron Man. Tony Stark, he gets caught up in what was then the Vietnam War, and he basically becomes a prisoner of war, and he escapes. He's in the Mark I of the Iron Man suit, and he escapes. Now, what they refitted into this, and this is quite clever, that in the origin we just had like a point of, okay, he's in the suit, and then he's back. We never saw quite, he was in some combat, then he left. We didn't really see how he got from point A to point B and how he got home.
Mm-hmm.
And what they refitted into was that that Iron Man, not Tony Stark, that Iron Man, because again they did the secret identity in the comics for the movie, completely got rid of that. Iron Man's my bodyguard. He's Jon Favreau. No. So he met Marine James Rhodes. Basically, met what was then a Marine, which nowadays we know is the Air Force. He's an airman. Basically, he runs into a Marine. Iron Man met and basically offered him a job after after the war, after helping him escape the Vietnamese prison. So then, what gets him the War Machine armor, what gets him to the Iron Man armor period is Demon in a Bottle, Tony Stark. And again, you'll see how well they really nailed this down in the movies if you really look in retrospect, folks.
Yeah, it's like I feel like everyone wanted a Demon in the Bottle movie, just a standalone Demon in the Bottle movie, but instead what they did is they kind of spread that story out throughout Tony's whole arc in the MCU.
Yeah, and again, so Rhoddy kind of fits into that. So he sees that Tony is definitely not in good shape right now, and he has to don the suit. And essentially, in the comics, what they did after Demon in the Bottle was Tony Stark. I don't know if it was purely because they kind of didn't know how to write themselves out of Demon in a Bottle, but the point is, Tony Stark had a quote unquote death where he disappeared, and
yeah,
Rhoddy,
I saw that in the wiki, and I was like, oh man, like it's funny how often that happens, and then it's just not a part of public consciousness.
Yeah, I remember there was this.
Like, honestly, it makes me wonder if at a certain point people are going to forget that Captain America was killed off.
Well, that was a huge event tied to, again, people still think that's like in Civil War, where it's like right after Civil War.
Right, yeah.
But it's interesting with the I always remember that element of Rhodey taking over for Iron Man, because it was either a panel or it was a cover. It's a famous like image with the whole this quote unquote death of Iron Man, because they did this really gruesome thing where there's a skull, Tony Stark's like quote unquote skull. There's a skull in the Iron Man helmet. That's how they revealed that, oh my god, Iron Man is dead. Bear in mind, of course, it wasn't like he was like a very long dead skull. It wasn't like fresh or anything. It was like a skeleton in the Iron Man armor. Ooh, spooky. Anyway, so after the quote unquote death, then he continued on as Iron Man, and once Tony came back, then he needed a new moniker, because again, he really basically they kind of pulled the whole Nightwing Batman thing, where Dick Grayson dons the Batman suit, and they kind of it wasn't the pure origin of Nightwing, but there's always like whenever you take over a mantle, there's always the question of, do you assume your old mantle or do you remain in the other mantle? Or in the comics, he remained a second Batman for a long time before they said, okay, we can't have two Batmans, it's too confusing. Make one Batman, then we'll put him back in the Nightwing suit. In this case, no, we're not gonna just have two Iron Mans fooling around. He's got a whole legion of Iron Man suits. We're gonna have like, something to set him apart, a War Machine suit. Something cool.
That was always the best part of Iron Man 3 for me, Dragon, is that it really captured the feel of the comic with all the different variations on the Iron Man armor.
Certainly, and again, one of my, I've always loved tracking the Iron Man armors and the progressions on the armors, and that at that point just got crazy, but so.
Oh yeah.
Because we all knew it was going to that place, but I didn't know they were going to.
Infinity War, there's going to be like a roll call.
Yeah, but Captain America, he did blow up all those suits, but he has built a lot more since then. So it's always a question
That's
of
what
how
I'm
much.
saying. There's going to be like a huge lineup in Infinity War.
Yeah, I know he's in the. He's either in the. I got. It's been a while since I've had to update what mark Iron Man's on right now, but I know he's either in the late 40s or he's right in the early 50s in terms of what mark he's on for the Iron Man suit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, that's really all about the creation of like how James Rhodes goes to be War Machine.
Okay, so yeah, in terms of legacy, Dragon, I feel like Rhoddy is a very important character in terms of sort of he is right up there with Dick Grayson in terms of
He's a mantle hero.
yeah, where he takes the mantle, but then he sort of runs with it and he makes it his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's definitely a big part of why people latch onto War Machine as much as they do, is that it kind of goes to show like sort of the universal appeal of a superhero and what a superhero represents, and that it doesn't just have to be one guy under that mask.
Certainly. What I love with Rhoddy, and again, I keep specifying Rhoddy because it's kind of what my point is. I love that Rhoddy is interesting out of the suit as he is in the suit. Don't get me wrong, in the suit is where you get all the toys and the marketing, and then the awesomeness and the gunfire and the action. Don't get me wrong, that's great. That's wonderful. But again, I mean, Rhoddy's a powerful character in his own right, and he's basically we see him as the decorated and capable military man. He reflects the revolutionary times of the 70s. And in turn, I didn't mention this in the creation, so I think it's kind of important for legacy, is that, so this is around the time of the 70s. He was created in 79. And especially as he goes on to be kind of the next Iron Man, for all intents and purposes, this was Marvel's answer to John Stewart in 71. So there's the John Stewart Green Lantern predates Rhoddy, because he was created in 1971, I believe.
Uh-huh.
But still, it's a very similar idea. If you have Green Lantern, and then you have Hal Jordan, then at a certain point we give it to John Stewart, and again, who's a very popular character. Again, one of these days on Black History Heroes, we'll get to the DC.
Oh, I'm sure we will. Absolutely.
Again, John Stewart is a hugely important character with that. I mean, he's very much an equivalent, but they're very different between Rhoddy and John Stewart. The point is, they're both kind of in that really revolutionary thing of, okay, we're going to take a known character, like an Iron Man, where we're going to show that, hey, we can. And I'm sorry, I'm second Tiki's words here, but I agree. And now we have another black character in the Iron Man armor, like Rhoddy when he initially took over the Iron Man armor. We have a teen girl character in the Iron Man armor now.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I forget her name. I'm not reading it, so I don't know. I just know it's like it's a 14-year-old black girl.
But yeah, Greg,
cool.
We're hitting on kind of like the imperfections of Rhoddy, and I feel like that's a very important thing to hit on his character as well. Rhoddy is a very vulnerable guy in certain situations.
Yeah.
Which, of course, makes him all the more relatable to to a subset of people. And I would imagine that Rhodey's a very important character for the, specifically, I can't imagine like black military comic book fans. I know that's probably a very specific subset of people, Dragon, but black comic book fans who have been in the military must love Rhoddy.
And again, another thing kind of in common with John Stewart, black military men. And again, it's kind of funny how Rhodey started off as a Marine and then went to the Air Force in the movies. And I believe they wrote that into the comics too, because I just really liked the idea. And John Stewart,
it makes sense with War Machine.
And John Stewart's always a military, and he's always a Marine. It's kind of funny. And yeah, I mean the other cool, but yeah, you're right, Tate. It is something that it really isn't. You don't see at the time to represent this would have been a huge thing.
Like Rhodey suffers from stuff like the fear of drowning and claustrophobia and all that stuff, kind of like offset by by his some of it childhood experiences, some of it stuff from the war.
Certainly, and now something I got to specify with that, Tiki, is to what I could find, and unless you found something I didn't. What we're kind of hitting on, folks, there's this great episode of Iron Man, the 90s animated series, and they had this great.
By the way, Dragon, that show has a terrible theme song.
I know. But
and I love Tony Stark's design in that show as well. I just want to point that out.
And it was before the movie, folks.
Anyways.
My point is, in that show, whether you love it or hate it,
it doesn't feel like a show I'll be binging anytime soon.
And the point, okay, look, the 90s Iron Man is not perfect. We all know this. Just my point is, and the reason I showed this to Tiki, that had a really memorable arc with Rhoddy, and Rhoddy he used to. There were two voices on Rhoddy because I think I might have misquoted to you because James Avery started. It was in the first season as Rhoddy. Then Dorian Haywood he took over the role. Anyway, there's a really great arc with Rhoddy. It's really
Kind of like a
exemplified.
Spider-Man No More arc in a way.
Yeah, it's very much exemplified in two episodes, kind of the beginning and end of it, almost, where it's Rhoddy. Rhoddy, his suit lost power essentially, and he was stuck in the water, and this brought back some very traumatic memories from his childhood, where his brother presumably drowned to death. And he couldn't save him. And this just really set in a weakness for Rhoddy that was really fascinating to me. And I love it so much. It astonishes me that, to what I understand, I don't think this is from the comics. I think it's purely for that show. They had this in there.
Sure you're right about that, yeah.
That's the thing that bugs me because it's such a cool idea, and it's like the fact that after like re-experiencing this trauma and being trapped underwater and again almost drowning to death, Rhoddy he develops claustrophobia and his fear of drowning, and they call this back a couple times, and especially when he goes to space for some theories I'm going to have later on. Again, that claustrophobia can be very dangerous when you're in the thick of things, where you're in an armored suit, and if you have to leave that suit in the midst of battle, you're in trouble. Yeah, he is definitely, again, for that sect of War Machine, that's also kind of a cool legacy thing. We see great weakness exposed in Rhoddy, which we have kind of, again, I can't prove it, but we've taken that inkling of an idea and we've seen it brought into the MCU to an extent, which we'll get into.
Okay. All right, so let's transition into the MCU, Dragon. Of course, we have to talk about Terrence Howard for a bit because he was our introduction to the character.
Certainly. So
I feel like Terrence Howard gets a bum rap, man. I really do. I mean, I think Don Cheadle, of course, has had a lot more time to sort of settle into the role, but I don't know, man. I really do think Terrence Howard and Robert Downey Jr. had a good chemistry with each other. They had a really good rapport in that first movie.
They did. I bought the friendship, and I bought Tony Stark's is driving Rhoddy to tearing his hair out.
That's what I liked about War Machine and Iron Man 1 that wasn't really in the Cheadle interpretations of Iron Man. Was just kind of the frustration that comes from being Tony Stark's best friend, like the relatable frustration.
Yeah, I mean, I love there's a great faithful blend of Rhoddy in both cinematic turns here, where we have both Terrence Howard and Don Cheadle do represent Rhoddy very accurately, but especially with Terrence Howard, you get the out of the suit Rhoddy, the very early, again the military man. Mm-hmm. Very much showcased it. Terrence again, it exists with Don Cheadle, and as the Iron Man films went forward, we got to see more of that, like him in the field out of the suit. But on the whole, because man, Don Cheadle was very fun to put on the suit, which I'm sure Terrence Howard, he may or may not have been shedding a tear. But then again, he has Empire now, so I don't know how much of a tear he shed. I assume he's having fun. I assume he is. But yeah, let's see. So it's kind of funny. Another thing is that. They both of them kind of experienced the Demon in the Bottle story and the Obadiah Stane story, which again was something that Rhoddy was very pivotal in both of those stories.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, once we get to Don Cheadle, we have that great fourth wall break right at the start of Iron Man 2. Like, yes, it's me. I'm here. Let's move on.
Something getting into Don Cheadle a little bit here is that I love that he starts out kind of, for all intents and purposes, for the comparison here, he very much starts as a Jim Gordon for Tony Stark in the beginning. He's very much the middleman between Tony and the kind of the PR realities of being Iron Man after he's outed himself.
My favorite Rhoddy is Iron Man 3 Rhoddy because of that dynamic. Because Rhoddy, it's like he's trying to help Tony, but at the same time, there's just sort of like they're kind of on two sides of the same coin. You know what I mean? Rhoddy is much more aligned with the government, whereas Tony Stark is, kind of breaking away from it.
Yeah. I think my favorite scene with Don Cheadle is Rhoddy. My favorite scene with honestly Rhoddy Pier, the one that always comes to mind for me is that great scene where, again, this is what Rhoddy represents to a great degree, and it's so well represented, where he takes responsibility when Tony Stark is unfit for duty. And that's what that character is, and we have that even before the suits are kind of come into play here, where this is at Tony's looking the Vanco after the racetrack, and of course, Tony's dying in Iron Man 2, and Rhoddy comes down there and says, "Tony, you mouthing off on Capitol Hill, essentially, the Senator CERN, you're the government, they're going to roll in here with tanks up to your front door. They're going to take your suits, Tony. They're going to take your suits if you don't play ball with them. And again, it's that beautiful bit where again, Tony, he looks at Tony, he can tell that something's off there, and Tony's like collapsing, and Rhoddy helps him to the desk. I always love that bit where he's setting straight the realities, but he's there to help him figure out a solution.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
It was a great testament to their friendship. And with that moment, what I'm getting at is he protects Tony from his self-destructive tendencies like a true friend does. And that's something we kind of see there. And of course, with a particular showdown, I'm sure we're going to talk about soon.
Okay, so Dragon, let's ask the question: what is the overall appeal of Rhoddy in the MCU?
He's a very field capable Iron Man in many respects. He's basically what if Tony Stark could never be bothered to go through the training, because again, as a scene in Avengers pointed out to us, he's more the cut the wire guy than crawl under the wire. He's not much for following orders. And in a way, and this is something I kind of hit upon with Rhoddy, kind of fascinating me, really thinking about him, is that he is very much for Tony. I think a reason Tony really respects Rhoddy and is really friends with Rhoddy is that in some capacity he's Captain America without the legacy, a Captain America that Tony can relate to. It's like, here's a guy, like, I don't have to be told about how great he is.
Because, he has Rhoddy and then Cap has Falcon, and they're both military guys, and they both kind of like represent the more down to earth sides of being a hero.
Exactly, and again, like Tony, it was old Tony doing military contracts and doing all the things. It's most likely how he met Rhoddy. I don't know how he met Rhoddy in the MCU, but it makes a lot of sense. He's probably selling weapons, and of course the military, I'm sure, is very grateful. And then there's probably a scene somewhere that we haven't seen where it's maybe with the Terrence Howard,
right,
or Tony's complimenting. Rhoddy on his training. Maybe Rhoddy even saves his life. You never know. And again, these two guys, they really have each other. And the cool thing with Rhoddy is that, he is. I mean, I don't mean to coin like a really corny phrase with this. And this, I've never really had to put this in the phrase. It's kind of the African American military dream in many regards.
I can see it.
Think about it. He is very much. He is now. Again, in no way. I'm saying. Sorry, I'm just trying to phrase this right.
And of course, folks, I want to kind of get to my, sort of the obligatory disclaimer here. We are the two whitest men on the internet.
We are the whitest men on the spectrum, folks.
Dragon, it's been scientifically proven. So
we're one shade away from being translucent, folks. I don't know what to tell you.
So with that in mind, we're trying to do our best to give our perspective on these characters, but of course,
Sure. Well, what I'm getting at is. It's like he's not. If you look by the 40s, you look at the 40s and you look at today, and if you look at the 40s, like he is, Rhoddy is kind of the modern day, especially as War Machine, all of it factored in there. He is very much the modern day vision of a Captain America. I say Captain America,
of course, not more so with the Iron Patriot stuff in the comic.
Absolutely, I mean, with that. Even more so, what I'm getting at is, like, especially when we get to that point, is what they take kind of someone who's he's not Steve Rogers in that, he's not he's not necessarily Steve Rogers, but he's like what Captain America was presented as, like the ultimate propaganda machine back then. That's what they've taken with War Machine, especially when they brand him as Iron Patriot. Where we're going to take someone like, hey, how do we market to the kids? How do we market to the kids? Because let's break down the demographics of the Avengers here. Okay, the toddlers love the Hulk because he smashes things. Mm-hmm. I'm sure the girls go crazy for Thor. And the kids love Iron Man. Well, Tony Stark, he's too wild to kind of rein in and kind of get him in on a propaganda side. And in the older generation, the greatest generation, they love Captain America because that's what they relate to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the old folks love Captain America, and that's not against the old folks. They have good taste. But see what I mean? So again, Iron Man, he's modern technology. Everyone, especially kids to fathers, all over the place. Everyone has a fondness for Iron Man. So what can we do? We have like a military man who is very much kind of like he's well trained. He's capable. He's very much again a modern day. Again, a modern day Captain America in terms of the American. Again, that. And I use it with the disclaimer we just have focused, folks. It's the African American dream of making the best of yourself, in the military and being a symbol to many other people out of the suit, and then in the suit you're Iron Man, which again is like outreach, and let's make him even more like Captain America. Let's slap the American flag on him.
Exactly.
So I think that's really interesting looking at Rhodey in that capacity. He's got cool weapons. He has like these upgrades to, it's kind of upgrades to the original Iron Man suit, mainly aesthetic upgrades, but upgrades nonetheless.
Hmm.
And the last thing I really have on, unless you got anything else,
Oh, I'm good.
is I think he's a cool character thrown into the MCU, the ever growing MCU. Like when all these new things like kind of are thrown at him. Like we have guys who can shrink. They're all these things are thrown at him, but he rolls with it. And like, okay, Tony Stark's back, but now he's in an iron suit. Okay, I'm gonna roll with it. Yeah, okay, well, you want me to put on an iron suit? Okay, I'm going to roll with it. Again, as the MCU grows, he grows with it, and again, he's not really uber skeptical with it. He's going with it because he has to change with the times.
All right. So that's a good transition, Dragon, because let's talk about his overall growth here. Honestly, like, yeah, he does roll with things, but I kind of feel like he's a very stable character where Rhodey doesn't really evolve all that much, but that's kind of for the better because, I feel like Tony Stark has kind of like the whole character arc, whereas Rhodey is kind of Tony's rock. So Rhodey is very malleable, but from movie to movie, he kind of is the same old Rhodey.
You're right about that, but I think while he remains the same, his role changes, and I think that's important. Is that so?
Okay.
In Iron Man, he's very much Rhodey all throughout. But in Iron Man, he's the friend. He's the friend who kind of gets his eyes open to what his other friend's getting into, and him getting roped into that. But again, it's all Rhodey. Iron Man 2, he kind of graduates from friend to partner, and that okay, he's going to be in the thick of it with him in the War Machine suit. Iron Man 3, he evolves to encapsulating what his friend is, but again, being seen as a symbol. He's an Iron Man who conforms to the system as a symbol. He's a military man with all the toys in the toy box and representing how we look in a world with heroes in it. So we can't just have heroes going around alone gunning. We have to show a uniformity and a control. And again, in a non-aggressive way, what we have with War Machine is that he is kind of the contingency for Iron Man. If Iron Man goes rogue, well, hey, we have our own Iron Man.
Oh, definitely.
And then we go to Ultron. Ultron, again, it's purely Rhodey, but we do get to play with kind of like a Rhodey who's seen a lot of stuff and grows with the MCU, and that he's outshined by the ever-growing MCU with like, I drop a tank down, boom, and just...
Yeah, I feel like Ultron is kind of like a meta commentary on like, that Rhodey he's a very consistent character, but he's never been the most flashy character.
Yeah, despite, again, having all the bells and whistles like a giant Gatling gun on him. Then we get to Civil War. In Civil War, I like that Rhodey is in Civil War. And, again, we actually bring to the surface what we've been saying here is that, again, Rhodey's he's a team player with the military, and he's always going to be on that side no matter what happens to him. And he's on the side of accountability, which again, he's the guy sticking Tony straight when when Tony's getting out of control. He's the guy he's Tony's true north on a compass.
Mm-hmm.
And he's on the side of accountability, and of course that accountability and that sticking to one side, steadfastly, it does come at a price that almost kills him, but especially definitely threatens his future. Let's say.
It's funny, Dragon. To me, the most memorable thing about Rhodey from Civil War continues to be the fact that we all were like, the death drop. It's funny, like I feel like Marvel does a good job at subverting our expectations for deaths because everyone thought that Hawkeye was going to die in Age of Ultron. And then everyone thought Rhodey was going to die in Civil War.
Yep.
Definitely makes me wonder, if Vision's going to, I think Vision's got a decent chance of making it out alive of Age of Ultron.
Part of me just really wishes we didn't know if we were getting, I know it sounds crazy, I kind of wish we didn't know we were getting an Avengers 4. I think it would make, because again, now I'm convinced like maybe there's gonna be like a time travel thing. Maybe there's gonna be like somehow we're gonna have everyone not get killed, then we're gonna do a thing. We're gonna undo some deaths, and then we're gonna have them in Avengers 4. I don't know.
Oh, you know that there's going to be some undone deaths at the end of Adventures 4. I mean, that's kind of a foregone conclusion.
That's what I'm saying. You know, it's gonna, it's gonna, it's
My
messing with
money, my good money's still on Spider-Man being one of those deaths, though.
it's messing with all my death predictions. You know, that's the thing. Because I was so going into this knowing when I was back to going to be a back-to-back movie, like it was going to be part one, part two. Saying, okay, we know how this is going to go. All right, so he's going to get the gems, and then he's going to have he's going to have the war. Okay, that's how it's going to go. But nope. We're left not knowing. They could be playing mind games, and I heard that they are given full script pages, by the way, so they don't know the ending either.
Oh,
Okay, so speaking of kind of Civil War in the grand MCU, let's talk about some of the great moments that get us to that place. Let's talk about the great moments in great defining moments of James Rhodes.
sure. I think kind of like one of the biggest ones is the party scene in Iron Man 2, because that kind of like is a big example of him stepping in as the moral compass for Tony.
Yep, and finally getting to put on the Mark II like he wanted to in the first movie.
And also finally addressing the demon in the bottle stuff, which was kind of hinted at in Iron Man 1, but everyone wanted more of it in Iron Man 2, so that was a big deal.
People, I love that. You know what? We don't appreciate that because everyone rags on Iron Man 2, but again, folks, we really got to appreciate this. They didn't go.
There's a lot to like about Iron Man 2.
I know.
Freaking oh, what's his name? I'm blanking on it.
Do you mean Whiplash?
No.
Justin Hammer. Justin Hammer, right?
Yeah, Justin. I know. I'm just trying to think of the Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
Sam Rockwell. You got Sam Rockwell. You got Howard Stark as Walt Disney, like a thinly veiled Walt Disney metaphor.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'm still looking.
Honestly, I think Whiplash kind of drags that whole movie down a little bit. I hate to say.
Well, like I think he overstays his welcome, and like again, up to the racetrack, he's done. I mean, that's the thing. You make God bleed. That's his ending. He's done. Nothing else. Anyway, but again, like I don't like the. I'm not thinking of myself as an apologist, but I'm going to say this. I'm still, call me naive if you will. I don't think the MCU's made a truly bad movie. I think they've all just been some of them have been outshined. Like Iron Man 2's been outshined, but it's not bad.
I would say Dark World is the closest to a bad movie.
And that's the thing. And again, the villain, it's mainly the villain that's bad in that movie. Everything else is
Natalie Portman.
That's always the that's the ever present Thor thing, like the human, the human side characters.
Which Ragnarok just totally went by the wayside, and all the better for it. So there you go.
I'm saying, even that didn't kill the movie. It's just like it's anyway. We're getting on a Thor tangent here. The point is, yes, Iron Man 2. It is. What I'm getting with the whole demon and bottle thing, which got us on that tangent, is that thing that people. The thing Iron Man 2 did smartly is that they didn't dwell on demon and bottle because it's like it's subverting the age-old gag with demon in a bottle, because the dark joke with demon in a bottle is that it's Iron Man. It's a superhero acting very drunkily irresponsible, and people like laughed and memed about it. It's like, oh my god, Iron Man flying around drunk in the suit. How hilarious is that? But again, that's the thing. Alcoholism, folks, is that's what I'm saying. But again, people just framed it as such. They always wrote him off as the drunkard. He was mocked for years for that. Tiki's like, hey, Iron Man's known as the drunkard, and then he's known as the drunkard who got Captain America killed.
Oh god,
those are the two things. Iron Man was hated before the Iron Man movie. I just want to point that out there. Okay, Iron Man was very infamous for a long time.
And of course, for the mediocre animated show.
Yeah. And again, it wasn't.
It wasn't Batman or even X-Men. Let's just say that much.
Oh yeah, I can agree with you full-heartedly.
It wasn't even Spider-Man.
No. Again, Spider-Man was much more beloved than the Iron Man show. But the fact is, they were smart enough to realize, no, let's not dwell on the negative. Let's not give people what they want to, like, oh man, he's so horrible. He's so he's no, not horrible. Like, oh, look at him, he's so sad and pathetic. Look how drunk he is. They didn't turn to like a negative thing. Let's draw this out. Let's just make it more and more like, let's not dwell on the negative. Let's show the negative and be aware of it, and have Rhoddy undercut it by saying, Tony, you got to stop now. He's like the guy who's, it's like you're like an alcoholic who refuses. I'm quoting Better Call Saul right now. You're an alcoholic who refuses to admit he's had a problem, and I'm not going to let you take the keys and drive the school bus off the cliff. It's very much what Rhoddy is. He's taking the keys away from Tony here to make sure he doesn't bring everything down around him.
Another pivotal moment with Rhoddy, I think, is the Iron Man 3, the scene where, um, oh, shoot, I'm drawing a blank here.
Do you mean the bar scene, or do you mean the scene with the president?
The scene with the president, right, yeah.
Which is
Let's
like the
talk about
most
that for a little bit.
how patriotic and awesome is that? You save the president who's in an Iron Man suit. That is
Exactly,
red, white, and blue themed.
exactly.
That's it. That's just great. But
And
again,
the president in that movie, he wasn't the best president. Like, he wasn't, he wasn't as bad as our current president by any stretch, but, he wasn't the best. But still, it didn't matter because he's our president, God damn it, and Rhodey's going to save him.
yeah. I always loved that he was named after an Iron Man writer. They called him President Ellis. It was named after Warren Ellis, who did who essentially did the story that was the model for Iron Man 3, the extremist stuff. So yeah.
Of course, we already mentioned the party scene from Age of Ultron kind of being a good sort of meta gag about, his placement in the MCU. Sort of like, yeah, he's a rock solid ally to have. He's not the flashiest personality.
The team up with with Tony fighting the Hammer Drones, because again, that whole movie they're kind of going up against each other again, responsibly as friends, and they're kind of like having it out with a whole sidekick battle. And then ultimately, it's again under control. He is fighting his friend, but at that point, they finally fight together. They finally have processed their arc, and they're fighting in unison together.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a nice moment of like them being able to come together and support each other the way they've been trying to the whole film. But yeah, again, Rhodey telling that story. Oh god, it's poor Rhodey. And again, I think the Vision scene also kind of complements that too. Where again, he's like, "Yeah, I'm back in the fray of it, man. Yeah, I'm taking out." Murderous robots my friend built. Yeah, and then Vision comes by and has the dramatic music playing behind and phases through Machine. What? And again, more on that with
Age of Ultron is like a really imperfect movie, but it does have very good comedic timing.
Does. And then, of course, there's more on like Rhodey reacting to the MCU. I think the best of it, honestly, that Vision thing was funny, but the best of Rhodey reacting to the ever-growing MCU is Ant-Man. I can't get enough of the Ant-Man moments. Rhodey must hate Ant-Man secretly. He really must, because Ant-Man just accidentally blew him. He tried to blow him up accidentally by throwing the water. I thought it was a water truck by accidentally throwing the water, the oil tanker. And of course, Giant Man, which I think breeds one of the funniest lines in regards to Rhodey from Tony Stark. Robert Downey Jr. delivers beautifully. Give me back my Rhodey. Oh, that's funny.
Which, of course, all kidding aside, that leads to probably the most pivotal moment going forward for Rhodey as a character.
Yes, I mean, like the two moments we had to hit with Rhodey in closing with this, again, the fall. We have to talk about the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when he... I feel
like kind of vaguely alludes to the whole the claustrophobia issue.
Here's what I'm suggesting, Tiki, with that. So, yes, you're right. It is very much... That's what happens. That's what happens in that episode that breeds the claustrophobia, is that his suit, conks out on him.
Exactly.
It's like when Iron Man in the first movie, he went up there and the suit had the icing problem, and he basically loses power until he lands back until he de-ices when he's in the atmosphere. That's essentially what happens to Rhodey on the way down there, and that's the fear. And what I would love to see them do in Infinity War, I really hope they do. Whether again, while death is just it's looming and just like messing with me, playing mind games like Vegas, like going to Vegas and betting against the house. The main thing that I really wanted to have with Rhodey is, because again, a lot of people are saying, okay, well, we just did that really important thing with Rhodey where we essentially we almost kill him, and we essentially paralyze him, and Tony has to build something to help him walk again. You think, okay, that's a fix for a solution. Well, it's a solution. Now we can walk again. I'm hoping they show in Infinity War that no, it's not an easy fix. That Rhodey is damaged goods, because he was in a suit and it conked at him. I'd like to think we do some of the claustrophobia stuff, like we do with the latter episode I showed you. Tiki does, where he's in space and he's going to want to take his suit. He's going to want to take the helmet off while getting claustrophobic in the middle of a panic attack, which Tony could definitely relate to, because again, he also went through panic attacks in Iron Man 3.
Yeah, it's definitely a new layer to add to his character going forward.
I just love to see Tony kind of shepherd Rhoddy through that panic and through that trauma of having almost died in the suit when it didn't work. Like it being in an Iron Man suit and having it not work would be, if I were in the suit, it would also be my worst nightmare of losing power and being helpless. And I think the last scene is kind of bridging on that. With that, there's a really great Civil War has a great end scene between right before the Tony Stank gag, which is funny. Is that scene where Rhoddy, being a true friend, while he is definitely having issues walking, he's telling Tony, Tony, even despite this, I knew it was in danger, being ever since I joined up, I knew I'd be in danger, but basically tells Tony not to blame himself and not too many words, in that I don't regret my choice, and that he still has the same stance that Tony had in regards to the Accords and in regards to the registration. Regards to the Registration Act, which I think is important. And what I love is that whether I think Rhodey's being honest there, but even if Rhodey was lying, which I'm not saying he is, but even if he was lying, it would be for the purpose of making Tony not feel bad about the things that he's done. It's just showing like him being the rock that Tony needs constantly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So, Dragon, let's kind of come to the end of our conversation here. So let's end things out with just kind of asking the question, what is Rhodey's impact today? And I guess I'll kind of start things out. Or do you want to go first, or should I go first? Are we going to do the Poe Dameron thing here?
Well, if you'd like, I could go first and kind of set the stage.
Go ahead. Why don't you build me up?
All right, so folks, looking at the impact of kind of like looking at Rhodey today, after the MCU, after everything, looking at the impact today with War Machine and Rhodey. That one, it was the first recast in the MCU. That's kind of another important thing that.
Oh yeah, you're right. We barely even hit upon that.
Yeah, because not counting again, Edward Norton was from like the old guard to the MCU guard. Everyone doesn't even.
Well, yeah, count. But Edward Norton, like Rhodey, was before Mark Ruffalo, though. So. Yeah,
certainly. Well, no, I don't mean that. I mean just like from the Eric Bana to Edward Norton, which again, it's the old guard.
Is that really going to count?
That's it. I'm just saying some people have made the crazy argument. Again, it's obviously it's a reboot. There were those people who said, "Hey, the Ang Lee Hulk still happened," and we're all trying to make sure that is not the case.
Technically speaking, the Incredible Hulk is kind of it's a weird gray area, Dragon, and that's sort of why I barely like the Incredible Hulk is certainly not a bad movie by any stretch, so it doesn't fall into that whole like, oh, Marvel's made a bad movie. But by the same token, I feel like Incredible Hulk is very disconnected from what the MCU is now. And one of the reasons is I feel like the Incredible Hulk could never decide if it wanted to be a reboot or a continuation of the Ang Lee Hulk.
Right. And again, I'm pretty sure they never wanted to be a continuation. That's just anyway. So the point is that
Rhodey starts in a similar place, though. It starts in a similar place with the story.
It does, but it's a place where the Hulk classically starts and he's on the run.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyways.
Anyway, so yes, so in addition to these, Rhodey was the first recast, similar to Iron Man as a businessman to aspire to be. Rhodey is, he's the new recruitment poster. Again, Iron Patriot or not, he is the new recruitment poster for like what you would want in a military man, in an Air Force guy. That's exactly what you want. You want to be like a respectable guy like James Rhodes. He is a symbol. Just with that, he's a symbol for kind of the responsible arm. I'm going to read into a few things, Rhodey. I think he's a symbol for. You could see him as a symbol for responsible armament and kind of trained gun use in a way. Not trying to make it like a whole let's save that for the Punisher, I guess. Not arguing gun politics, but just in looking at he is very much a positive symbol for like this is someone who you can trust. Like a guy who was trained to handle his heavy artillery without worrying about him at his most irresponsible, doing shots, like shooting watermelons in his mansion. You don't have to worry about that with Rhodey at all.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy who calls out Tony Stark on the bigger picture, which I think is important. Without that, you don't get Tony Stark growing as a person as much as he's done. He's a character who, as I echoed earlier, so I guess I'll bring it home with. I'm sorry. One last thing is a little fact. I want to make sure I bring it up before we end here. Is that this might blow your mind? I remember they were always floating around about doing a War Machine spin-off movie, and because Black Panther has come out...
Yeah, I've heard about that, yeah.
So the writer of Black Panther, one of the writers, because Coogler, he also co-wrote it, Joe Robert Cole, I think. Joe Robert Cole, he he was a writer, and he was kind of contracted to do some writing for Marvel. And initially, he wrote a treatment for a War Machine spin-off movie, but post Iron Man 3, Iron Man's world was kind of up in the air. Like, we blow up all the suits. We don't know if we're coming back with Iron Man. And because of that, they canned the War Machine movie. But it just shows you, like, the strength of War Machine. There's a lot of interest. There's a lot of stay power with this character. He's got a very memorable design with, it's Iron Man with cooler, more present guns.
I think that War Machine's design is kind of like almost like a mix of like the Mach 1 and the Mach 2 designs.
Yeah,
like kind of the color scheme of the Mach 2, or I'm sorry, the color scheme, like the gray color scheme of the Mach 1, but the sleekness of the Mach 2.
Yeah, it has, again, as we saw with just how Justin Hammer armored it. Again, it's the Mark II, but has like extra on the nose armaments, bells and whistles, that Tony Stark calls them on there. But yes, I see what you're saying, though, where, again, functionally it's the Mark II, but it has like the clunky yet functional armaments of the Mark I that he escaped.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly. So last thing I'll say is to kind of sort of my point I was making earlier, is that he's a character who represents progression and advancement on a human level versus a technical level, and that's kind of where he and Tony kind of differ, but on a very important fundamental level. Together, they're a fusion of a very well-rounded character arc for Tony Stark. But again, he's the human level over, like, he advances on that human level while still being consistent, instead of just like being the next technological upgrade. Like, hey, do we finally get the Hulkbuster? We don't have to worry about that with Rhoddy. It's just like, hey, Iron Man needs backup. He needs good backup. That's Rhoddy.
Yeah, folks, and just to kind of wheel back around to everything I've been saying about Rhoddy throughout this conversation, sort of tie it up in a nice little bow, if you will. Rhoddy is the ultimate sidekick turned hero in his own right in the MCU and in Marvel in general. I feel like he's very prominent in that regard. He's got a very shining light. He's sort of the beacon for other supporting characters. Hellcat is a great example. The Winter Soldier is another one of, these side characters that have gone through their huge arcs in their own right and have kind of come out the other side as big players. And so Rhoddy, like I said, the sidekick turned hero thing, that's definitely a big thing. Also, just kind of the real world implications of it. He's the rock solid best friend who's going to get the job done. He's not a flashy personality, but he's a very, he's a more than competent person when it comes to actually, being a hero. And most importantly with Rhoddy, just as you said, Dragon, I really do feel like he represents kind of like, like as I was saying, like imagine being an African-American in the military who happens to be a comic book fan. Rhodes is your guy. It's like Rhodes and Falcon, but I feel like we'll get to Falcon, but Falcon is much more kind of like the Lando Calrissian, like cool military guy, whereas Rhodes is kind of like the down to earth, like very relatable military guy. And I feel like that almost gives him an edge character wise. Of course, I'm not trying to say anything to diminish Falcon. We're definitely going to have a whole podcast praising the heck out of Falcon, but I digress. That's about all there is to say, folks. I'm very impressed with, the lengths in which Rhoddy kind of extends his legacy. It's much more than sort of the surface level jokes in Age of Ultron would lead you to believe. There's a rich history there with this character.
One last point we got to make before we end this. I'm sorry, I have to interject because I was going to forget is that.
Yeah, it's fine.
What's so wonderful with Rhoddy and his War Machine? He's so rich a character, but I love this. He's the complete opposite of kind of such a commonplace trope in so many things. He is the opposite of the token. He's the opposite of Token, and I think that goes a long way with him.
I'm glad you bring that up, Dragon, because I think that's absolutely true. There's really, in terms of being a black man, Luke Cage is, his race is much more important to Luke Cage as a character, whereas, and not to call Luke Cage a token character, obviously.
I mean, like characters like Rhoddy or Falcon, and we're going to get into the reasons why. I mean, they're, again, as we say here with Rhoddy, he could easily fall into being the token black friend, but he's not. Because again, this is a guy with he's got a very respectable background, and again, he's the guy he's super proactive, and he's very important in the arc of Tony Stark. But and as Tiki has expressed very well, is that he's gone through his own evolution, and again, he's made his own mark on the MCU. He's very important, and again, represents a previously underrepresented sect of the military.
All right. Okay, so that's all for now, folks. Until next time, when we talk about the heroes who made the leap from page to screen, showing us a world, not simply black or white, but brimming with color as well as character.
With our next installment of Black History Heroes.
James Rhode Island Rhodes.